Welcome to episode 3 of the Stoke Event podcast. My guest today is Jon Saxby, former Light Dragoon Cavalryman turned personal trainer. Jon is an old friend of mine from my hometown of Hull, Yorkshire, and was a member of the British Army Cavalry Regiment, the Light Dragoons, from 2002 to 2011. He's also a husband, a father, a musician, and a personal trainer. We discuss his various deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, Operation Panther's Claw, a major British military offensive in Helmand Province in 2009, and the toll this took on the regiment. Jon pays tribute to those that were lost and opens up what his diagnosis of PTSD since leaving the military and his ongoing recovery and transition from military life into the civilian world. This is a great episode with some hard-hitting moments, emotional testimonies and raw honesty from Jon, and of course we have a bit of a laugh along the way. I really enjoyed making this episode and I think you'll enjoy listening to it. I really appreciate it if you could please take a moment to leave a rating and or review, as this will help to give the podcast a boost and get it out to a wider audience. Anyway, here we go with episode 3. Jon Saxby, the Light Dragoons, reflecting on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, contemplating mental health and recovery. I will pass over to Jon and let him introduce himself.
All right, my name's Jon. Like I said, I've known James for a long time. I knew him as Mez way back when. So yeah, like he says, I was in the army and now I'm a personal trainer. So I used to be from Hull. Well, I am from Hull. I used to live there, but now I live in the northeast. Hence the mixed up accent.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a twang in there.
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't think it was there last time I spoke to you.
No,
it's been
probably
quite a
not.
while.
Probably not.
So, if you just want to kick us off, Jon, with sort of a bit about your personal background, how did you end up joining the armed forces, and how long did you serve for?
Right, so it was a bit of a weird one, really. I'll say weird. So I was in the last year of secondary school, so this would be back in 2002. Everyone I knew, they were going to be doing either sixth form or going on to college or whatever, and I didn't really want to do further education anymore. I'll be honest, I'd never heard of an apprenticeship, so I didn't know that was an option, but I saw an advert on the telly and that looked quite cool, like for the army. So it was like, I think it was a tank or something. I was like, oh, that looks class. And then I went to the recruitment office in Hull and spoke to the fella there. Obviously they do what they do, they give you the spiel, sell you the dream. I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. And then I went home, said to my parents, well, my mum and my stepdad said, oh, look, this is what I want to do. And they were unsupportive, but they were obviously sceptical that I would actually go through with it, just because I was a typical young lad, I suppose. Like you'd say you'd do something and then you wouldn't. It'd be like your typical, oh, I'll do my homework tomorrow, you never get round to it sort of thing. So I think they were a bit sceptical as to whether I'd do it. And then a few people at school who were told that was what I wanted to, like, you won't do it. And because I'm a bit of a stubborn bastard, I was like, but can we swear on here?
Yeah, crack on, mate.
So because I'm a bit stubborn, I was like, oh, well, I'll show you. I went to the Army Foundation College, started that slightly bit. That was my basic training because I was under the age of 18. Did that. So I finished there in 2003, went to Bovington, which is where I did my armoured training, and then got to my regiment, which was the Light Dragoons in 2004. And then I was with them until 2011 when I left. Did 3 tours in that time. So I went to Iraq in 2005. I then did Afghanistan in 2007 and 2009.
Right. So how long were the tours each? Forgive my ignorance.
No, it's all right. So they're supposed to be 6 months. They very rarely are. That was how it was back then. It might be different now, but if effectively, like, you always find you get there a little bit early and you always get flown home a little bit late. So it's usually close to 7 months. I think my second tour of Afghanistan was getting on for just over 8 months, I believe it was, by the time we got home. So it's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time to be away from home when you're very young.
Yeah, definitely, and to be sort of, I guess in the environment that you were in as well at that age. So how old were you when you first deployment and your first tour?
So when I went to Iraq, I was 18. I had my 19th birthday out there. I was 20. Was I 20? Yeah, I was 20 when I went to Afghan the first time. I had my 21st out there, and then I was 22 on my second tour.
Right, so that was quite a sort of quite a lot within a short space of time then, at quite a young age. You're quite sort of, I think they're very formative years, aren't they,
Yeah.
at that age? I think that'll probably be around the time that I think I met you. It's got to be roughly 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that I've
yeah, I would
known
say
you.
that.
So I remember talking to you about it at the time.
Yeah,
And I think we were probably about, I think we were about 18,
yeah,
19 at the
yeah, I
time.
think so.
Yeah, so that was your three tours, Iraq and Afghanistan twice. Yeah. So what sort of thing did you get up to then? I imagine there was a few differences between the tour in Iraq and then the two subsequent tours in Afghanistan, were there?
Yeah, definitely. So the tour in Iraq, I'll be honest, it was quite quiet. That I suppose because you're only 18, you don't really understand how dangerous potentially what it is that you're doing. We deployed as a full regiment, so you're talking 300-400 blokes or something. Out of all of us, we had less than a handful of contacts. Contacts is where you get shot at, and I was never in any of them in Iraq, so I'm not going to pretend that it was anything like Black Hawk Down or anything like that for me anyway. We had the camp got mortared maybe less than a handful of times as well. Nothing ever landed inside the wire. It was, I think, the first time I had the mortar alarm, I didn't know what it was. I was like, "Fuck's that?" And then it was like, "Oh, we've just been mortared." You're like, "Have we? All right, sound." So yeah, and then we had one casualty, which was one lad who got shot in the leg. More bad luck because his leg happened to be where someone had fired their AK-47. So, I mean, it obviously wasn't great for him, but he made a full recovery. He said it hurt, which, you'd imagine it would.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, dead quiet. Obviously, it gives us a bit of, I would say a bit of perspective, because obviously when you're 18, most 18-year-olds are still sort of coming to terms with who they are. The problems that an 18-year-old back home would have, when you've been to somewhere like that and you see how little people are living with, even if you're not scrapping and stuff like that, you still see they're living with dead donkeys and that laying on the floor rotting and without running water and without electricity and with the threat of bandits and bits and pieces. And then you cut and you see how they're living, and then you go home and someone's like, "Oh, my mum won't give us a tenner, so I can go to the pub." Be like, "Well, all right, mate, like calm down, could be worse."
Yeah, minor problems, isn't it? I imagine it gave you some perspective.
Yeah, I would say that definitely. And then my two tours in Afghan, they were very different to each other as well. So my first one, I was with the regiment quarters. So again, quite quiet. I did get shipped out a couple of times, and I got in maybe 2 contacts there. But even then, I wouldn't even say they were contacts. So basically, I've been shipped out to a fire base called Dwyer. Right. So it eventually became a big camp. But when I was there, it was like we call it a berm. So it's like, looks a bit like a ridge made out of sand with some artillery pieces in it. They were firing on the front line, doing fire support for the infantry down in Garmecia. I went out the force protection cell a couple of times just because that's what you do. I was there to stag on radios, but if they needed a bod for clearance patrol or whatever, if you're young, you're daft, you go, "Oh yeah, I'll jump in if you need." I was on top cover on a vehicle a couple of times, and I said brassed up. You get shot at, but you can't really see where it's coming from. You're firing at fuck all. Again, saying, it was just more like, "What was that?" rather than an actual, "Oh my God, this is really dangerous and scary" sort of situation. And then,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
there.
and then my second tour, that was when things went a bit west. We had a lot of casualties, unfortunately, and that's when it went a bit wrong, and that's when I decided it wasn't for me no more.
Right, so that was you. You were like, "Yeah, I've had enough of this, really." And I guess you're probably a little bit older, a little bit wiser. Maybe you've had a bit more experience, and you kind of. I think the older you get, you process risk differently, don't you? As you get older, I think, like you say, when you're 18, you haven't really got a clue what you're letting yourself in for, have you? And the older you get, I think the more aware you become of what you're actually doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That, and I'd met my missus by then as well, who's now my wife. So it was like we got together September 2006. I asked her out, and then I went on my first tour of Afghan April time 2007. So we'd not even been together a year, and then spent 6 months away, and then came back, and then obviously we were then pretty much straight back into pre-deployment training, because although because I was away 2007, then back away 2009, but I spent most of 2008 training to deploy back in 2009, so we weren't really seeing a lot of each other. And I'd
so even though you're still in the country way, I take it, doing a lot of your pre-deployment training.
It was all still done in the country, but obviously
but you're away from home.
Yeah, so I mean, I was based down in Norfolk. She's from just outside Chesley Street up in the northeast. So we weren't really seeing that much of each other. Obviously, because you'd be working Monday to Friday, and then they might say, oh, well, instead of going home this weekend, we're actually going to go down to Castle Martin, which is a tank ridge in Wales, or you're going down to Lytton Hythe, or you're doing this in Sennybridge or whatever. And it's like, oh, babe, I said I was coming home. I'm not like, obviously that puts the strain on a young relationship. And I mean, obviously it's a relationship that's lasted because we're still together now, but it was sort of like, I think this could be the person I'm supposed to be with, and I'm not sort of with her. So it does add a thing. I mean, she never pressured me or anything like that, but it definitely changed my priorities once I met the person.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've obviously identified where your priorities are, and that's something I always try and emphasise to people is you put your family before your career, and obviously that's what you've sort of realised. This is what I need to do, and I guess getting deployed over there. There's a very real chance that you might not come back. So I guess that's added pressure for you, and probably help maybe made your decision a bit clearer, possibly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there was definitely a moment. It was after one of our lads was killed. It was a lad called Anthony Lombardi. He was killed in an IED strike. And there was basically been in a vehicle that had been blown up. That vehicle we'd had to, well, I say we, I wasn't personally there when it happened. I was in a clearance team trying to get to him when he got blown up, and obviously the scene was sort of cordoned off. The vehicle had to get denied, so basically they had to like strip all the kit out of it and basically blow it up so the Taliban couldn't use it. All the kit then got brought back to our compound. We were then obviously then had to sort that kit out, and there was there was basically what was left of his body armour, which was obviously covered in blood and claret and all that. And I had to go throw that in a burn pit. And I was like, is this really what my life's like? Is this how things are going to go? And then I'm sure we'd already been told that the regiment was due to deploy back again in 2012. And I was like, I'm not doing this again.
So you're in the team trying to reach him. So you've received a call that he's been blown up, and you're in the team that are actually trying to get to him. Did you say?
No. So basically, what happened was we were out. It's called ground holding. So although we were on armoured vehicles, we were attached to a light royal infantry company. We were their fire support. They'd been we were with A Company 2 Mercy, and they'd been tasked with basically taking another compound so that another company could get flown in, and they could then establish themselves in another compound, and basically so we could dominate the ground. The company pushed out. We'd taken the compound, done all that. That all went relatively smoothly. We then had to get supplies brought in, so like ammunition, food, water, all that sort of thing. So the bods coming in have actually got kit and supplies and things to live off. We'd recommended obviously that you fly it in, because the whole area had been riddled with IEDs. There've been numerous IED strikes. We'd taken a few in the build up and stuff. Because of where the compound was, there was an area where we could clear a helicopter landing site, and have eyes on it and watch it the entire time, so it would be a lot safer. Decisions that were made, obviously several pay grades above anyone who was there decided that it should come in via a road convoy. So the road convoy left, I want to say it's Fob Price to left. That's where it came from, which is like the nearest sort of big camp. The convoy was coming, and then some of our lads basically got dragged out of our compound to escort the convoy from where they were basically like the rear party of our company. Okay. So they were like holding the compound while the rest of us went and did that. Went and did the job. He basically his crew got sort of dragged out. Let's say dragged out. Though probably asked and said yeah. Anyway, they got tasked with being part of the convoy escort. We basically said that's a really silly idea. So our chain of command had said, well, look, what we'll do is they're going to be heading towards us. They'll have a clearance team with them. We'll sort of meet them halfway. We were coming up anyway. As we're coming up this like bank, we heard a bang, and then on the radio it was there's been contact IED. So there's been an IED strike, and then that's when we found out that it was Lombo's wagon that had been hit, and it was Lombo who was gone. Which was obviously not nice. Is what it is. Like we were maybe 500-600 meters away from where it happened, so we weren't far. But yeah. But obviously, that was one that I felt a bit guilty about, because I was always like, well, what if we'd been a bit faster? What if if we were coming because we were sort of coming effectively to meet them in the middle, we were coming from the other side. Maybe we would have found the device and could have prevented it. But obviously, it's all ifs and buts, and it's one of those things that you can play it over in your head, but obviously it doesn't change now. And odds are there's nothing you are where
you yeah, of course, yeah, you are where you are, and yeah, I guess. It's natural to kind of think like that and replay events, isn't it? But ultimately, no one was responsible for that, and it's, I guess, did you find out that he was? Did you find out straight away then?
Well, that's it, more or less. So basically, you can hear the radio chatter, and they'll give out when they know they've got casualties, if they'll always give it's called a ZAP number of the casualty. So it's basically what is it? Your first two letters of your surname and your last four of or your last two numbers of your military number, or maybe your last four. It's been that long since I've done it, but yeah, it's a combination of some letters in your surname and some numbers from your army number. And anyway, it was they gave a number. And it was like, well, that can only be Lombo, because obviously they said it was a wagon that had been blown up. Yeah. Then the other two lived, but the commander was a bilateral amputee, and the operator he got hit with the engine compartment. Sorry, the engine block rather, that got blown out the compartment, which landed on him, bounced off, which quite badly damaged his back and ruptured his spleen, and he ended up ripping off the top of his thumb as well.
Right. So, when you say bilateral, do you mean
both legs?
Both legs.
Both legs above the knee.
Both legs. Yeah. Wow. God. Yeah. It's that's a lot of, I remember at the time when it was going on, and you'd hear a lot of the deaths reported, but you didn't always hear about the catastrophic injuries that soldiers were suffering, did you? And I know that was quite high numbers, weren't they?
I think there's over 2,000, I think, was the actual number of wounded.
Well, yeah. When you say you had to blow the remnants up to make sure that the Taliban couldn't use it, is that because they would have attempted to salvage what was left of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got radios and those other bits of kit that you don't want them to be able to get their hands on to then go, oh, well, I wonder how this works. Because if they figure that out, then obviously you've got a whole world of other problems. So they had to strip a lot of gear out of it, and obviously, if you leave a weapon system in there, they're going to use that. If you leave ammunition in there, they're going to use that. So it's obviously you've got to make sure it's not usable for them. I mean, like I say, it wasn't us personally that were doing that aspect of it. It was the team who came out to clear the scene after they'd been struck. But obviously we had heard it was all going on, and then when we got back to our compound after everything had finished happening, we had all their gear to sort out, which obviously wasn't very nice.
I can imagine. Well, I say I can imagine. I probably can't fully appreciate what it was like. So your role in the clearance team, what exactly would the clearance team do then? Are you literally clearing the way for a convoy?
So I mean, when we were trying to meet them halfway, so we did a thing basically. They call it up Barmer. Basically, it's like you've got a couple of lads with metal detectors. And a couple of lads sort of covering them, and they're at the front. And I was commanding the Barmer team. We were clearing away. Obviously you can't rush it. You've got to go quite slow. Because as we'd found out previously, because the basic metal detector, it lights up and makes a bit of a noise, but there's lots of metal in the ground in Afghanistan. So it's not a case of every beep could. It's is it not? So you're constantly digging holes in the dirt and finding a coin or a bit of scrap or something, going right, okay. But if you don't, the one time you don't bother is the one time that it's a pressure plate and someone stands on it and someone's there.
I bet. I was just thinking, it's it's human nature to sort of for complacency to creep in, isn't it? The more you're exposed to something, it's kind of human nature to take the path of least resistance. But obviously, in that situation, I imagine you'd have to be so careful with absolutely everything you come across, and you'd probably have to be constantly checking yourselves and making. I mean, one wrong step. And,
well, I mean that's pretty much how that's pretty much how it goes. Like you say, you step in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that could be it. But that's sort of how it went.
So whereabouts in Afghanistan was where you actually deployed to?
So both tours, it was Helmand Province. So my first tour I was predominantly in Lashkargah. That was where I was predominantly. Like I said, I used to get shipped out to Firebase Dwyer, which is just outside of a town called Garmsir, which at that point was the front. Garmsir was the front line, and then the Taliban got pushed back. By the time I'd been there for my second tour, and then on my second tour, we initially started at Garmsir. The Taliban had been pushed out of there. They were south on the call it a PB line, which means patrol base line. And there was another unit stationed down there. We did go down there to do some ops and stuff. thankfully we didn't take any casualties. Had a few little bits and pieces, had a few scraps down there, but nothing went wrong at that point for us, for our troop personally. And then after that, we got pulled back into Camp Bastion, which was like the big camp, and then we got shipped out to do a big offensive operation called Operation Panther's Claw, which I think was also called Panchai Palang, and that's when that's when things really started going west. So we started taking quite a few casualties and stuff.
Right. Okay. So, are you happy to sort of take us through like the timeline of kind of that operation?
Yeah, of course. So,
I think it'd be quite interesting to just kind of, especially for like for someone like me who's I don't really I've read a bit about the military and I am quite interested in it, but in terms of specific details, I would find it quite interesting to sort of hear from you, like kind of the timeline of events and what happened and kind of how it kind of went for you. Really.
Yeah, of course. So before I went, every time you go on tour, you get a 2 week block. It's called R&R. Basically, it's just you get a 2 week trip back home. So before I went home, we knew that we were going on an op. We didn't know the full details of it, but we knew a big op was being planned. And then anyway, we got allocated that particular block for R&R. So I went home, came back. The boys had moved from Garmacia back to Camp Bastion. They were like getting prepped in bits and pieces. So I got the lowdown. It's all right. We're going to be pushing out. We're going and doing this. We're going to go and do this up. We're going to be out for a period of time. We'll be back when we're back, sort of thing. There was no like end date on it or anything like that. So this would have been June, mid-June, maybe end of June. No, I can't. Hang on, I'm getting that wrong. No, I'd already had my birthday, so it must have been going on for back end of June, early July. Anyway, we pushed out from Camp Bastion down to Fort Price. There was already the operation had kind of already started. There was a unit called the Black Watch, who were now I think they're now the Scots or something. But anyway, there was a unit already in one part of this area called Babaji, which is basically an irrigated area around the Helmand River. It forms part of the green zone, which is basically just all the field and farmland around the Helmand River because they irrigate it and stuff so they can farm. They'd been in quite a heavy fighting, and we were getting pushed out. Anyway, we got to Camp Fog Price. Our troop got sent out for the break-in, so we went out there with a troop of Leopard 2s from the Danish army. So Leopard 2 is like a main battle tank. I think we spent about a day, maybe a bit more, smashing targets, doing stuff. Like we had a fast forward air controller. They were calling stuff in, so there's obviously quite a lot of things happening there. We then pulled back in, basically refitted for 10, 12 hours or so. And then at first, we pushed out onto the ground as a company, as a battle group. And then within the first 15 minutes, we had an IED straight at the vehicle in front of mine, got blown up. Thankfully, all 3 lads lived, but that was my first, I've been in scraps before. I've been in contacts before and done a bit of that. But that was the first time anything had gone wrong on our end. So, like I said, we were going along this track. We had a dismounted team in front of us, checking for like IEDs and things. Troop leader's vehicle, and there was one behind, which was mine. And then we were going along anyway. There's loads of there's radio chatter, there's bits and pieces. Obviously, you're on edge because you know that things could go wrong at any second, but you're not anticipating. Although you know it can go wrong, you're hoping it's not going to. Anyway, this big cloud of smoke. There's bits of metal flying everywhere. Our wagon it felt like it did a wheelie. So we thought we'd been it. So I'm looking at me, we're like, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? Like the 3 people in the crew. So there's the driver's in front of us, commander's next to us, and I'm on the side of him. And we're all like, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? And it felt like quite a while that we were establishing that we were all right. And as we sort of looked up, and the dust was sort of settling, and we could see the vehicle in front of ours on its side, the engine deck had been blown up, and one of the lads was hanging out the turret. And we were like, shit. So I slung my helmet off, jumped off, and started running towards it. I got about halfway there. I realised I had no helmet, no weapon, no metal detector, which we call a Valen. Anyway, I had nothing with us. I literally just took off running, and it was little voice went secondary devices. I was like, oh shit. So I'm sort of stuck in between the 2 vehicles, and I'm sort of looking around. And anyway, I could see one of the lads crawl out. And I was like, well, I've got to go help him. So I literally just sort of crossed my fingers and hope for the best and ran forward. Got to him. He was quite disorientated. He had everything attached, so obviously that was the main thing. But
Yeah.
we had on the vehicles, because we'd loaded them all up, there was an anti-tank missile strapped to the side of it, had a big fuck off crack down the side of it, and he's trying to grab it. He's like, we need to deny it, we can't let him use it. Like, you fucking doing, you lunatic. Like, obviously disorientated, concussed and all that. So like sort of dragged him off there. There's our troop leader literally hanging out the turret unconscious. So we're like, right, we need to get him out. So I'm not a big dude. The gunner Rocky, Charlie Rocky, he wasn't a big lad at the time either. So literally like two hobbits trying to grab this flipping mountain of a man, trying to drag him out of a turret, which was not pleasant.
Yeah.
So we dragged him out.
But
As we get him on the deck, he starts coming to. Thankfully, he's all right. Obviously, disorientated and all that sort of thing. And then the driver just sort of pops around the side of the vehicle, and he's like, "What's happened here?" We're like, "Oh mate, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." But he's like stumbling around all over, and obviously, you still got in your head, well, there could be any amount of stuff in the floor here. So they
yeah.
had to sort of grab hold of him. I've got the two of them, like the gunner and the commander, sort of like sat down. I was like, but the driver was getting quite upset. So I was like, right, mate, you come back to mine, you come back to right. So sort of walked him along the track, so you can see the track marks on the floor. So like I had to literally had him more or less in front of us, walking him along the track, like
Yeah.
along the track marks. So it was like, well,
Yeah.
there's already been something go over that, so you'd like to think if anything was there, it would have already gone off. So sort
Yeah.
of walks
Yeah.
him back. Them two are still sat there, thankfully not moving. So like goes back, sort of did the same again, got the two of them back, and then like the medics came forward. They got like casevaced up and medevaced or whatever you call it. Basically taken away and sent to Camp Bastion to be checked over. Thankfully, all three of them did make a full recovery. Two of them did come back out on the ground. The gunner and the commander, they both made it back out after a period of recovery and stuff. But yeah, literally like once they'd been casevaced, it was like right, I had to hop back on my vehicle and we were back on it. So that was literally the first 15 minutes of the first day.
God, and then just that's quite a start, and then obviously you just straight back into it, aren't you?
And it went on for a while, good couple of weeks. We had a few lads killed, unfortunately. But there'd been a lad, David Dennis, he'd been killed securing it. He wasn't in my troop, but he was part of my regiment. His boys had been tasked with securing a helicopter landing site for some casualties. As they're doing that, he got killed by an IED. So we sort of found, and then it was a day or two after, one of our boys was clearing this was in my troop. One of our boys was clearing a compound. It was Chris Whiteside was the barman's coverman. So that we had the guy doing the thing with the metal detector. Chris was covering him, but we called him Norm after the Sunderland manager. Anyway. So you got Mick, Big Mick Hardy. He's doing the do with the Valen. Chris is covering him. Mick stands on the pressure plate. The device is in the wall, and Norm took the blast. So Norm was killed. Mick was hit by Norm's body armor plate as it got blown off him. That broke his which broke his leg. So that was a couple of lads out. They had from the IED blast on the vehicle. They'd obviously had the three lads in the vehicle get taken out off the ground. It turned out one of the dismounted team had a ruptured eardrum, so his balance was gone. He couldn't aim out, so he had to get gone. There was another lad he said he damaged his back, but we think he was blagging it a bit. But his head wasn't in the game, so he got took out. So there you're talking 5 casualties in one day. Once,
Bloody hell, one day.
yeah, once when Norm was killed, we had Mick get hit in the leg. We had a young lad. He was only 18. Martin, we called him Winker. He was 18, but he looked about 12. Like. I mean, I was young doing it. You know, I was young when I was doing it. But I'd done 2 tours by then. That was his first tour. That was his first anything. And he ended up going down with battle shock, which completely understandable. Right. You know, one of them things. You know, he was quite close with Norm.
Yeah.
So yeah, he'd gone down with that. And then a few days after that, we had 4 lads taken out by an RPG. They were not killed, thankfully, but wounded. So in it, Bradders, he got basically they were on this tree line. They were all laid sort of in a laid down basically in a prone position. They were like overlooking some ground. RPG goes off above them. Bradders takes most of it. He got hit in the calf. You then had Will, Stinger, and Matthews. They all then caught subsequently less large slices of it. Dinger was the only one who was kept out in theatre. They all went back to Camp Bastion, obviously, but he was the only one who was not injured enough to be sent home. So, like, Bradders ended up opting for a amputation on his calf, on his lower leg eventually, just because it was never going to recover.
Right.
I saw him a couple of years ago. He's doing fine. But yeah, like he I mean, he wasn't a big lad anyway, and it blew off pretty much whatever muscle he did have on him on that part of his body. So yeah, that was a pretty bad injury. And then I appreciate this is all sounding very grim, but this is just how
it's the reality of it, isn't it? And it's quite heavy casualties in a short space of time.
And then we didn't. To be fair, I don't think we took any more for a little bit. We had the op went on for another few weeks. We then pushed to the point where to the line where we'd agreed to clear up towards.
So the purpose of this, you're basically just pushing forwards and trying to gain as much ground as you can, basically, and push the Taliban.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea was because there was supposed to be some elections or something happening in that part of the country. They obviously wanted to clear the area of Taliban influence, so then they can effectively have their own government and all that sort of thing. But obviously that came at a cost. Anyway, after we'd done the clearing phase, we then went into like a holding phase. So there's basically pockets of soldiers in compounds all along, like all in around the area, so you can like patrol the ground, obviously. Because there's no point clearing an area then just buggering off because the Taliban will just come straight back. So you've got to hold the ground, haven't you? So we're in our compound holding our area. One of our lads, he'd been on R&R at the start of the op. Anyway, he'd flown back out and been wanted to come back to us, but there'd been another troop in our unit there that must have been an injury or an illness or something, but there was basically a spot for somebody who couldn't. A spot had opened up because somebody couldn't go out. Anyway, one of our lads, Lenny, Chris Lawrence, he took the slot, started driving for this troop. Anyway, we're in our area holding that area. He's with his troop doing his thing. He's then on it was either a clearance operation or a convoy or something like that. Anyway, his vehicle got hit and unfortunately he was killed. The other two crew members walked away, thankfully, but he was killed. And then we continued that holding operation for a bit, and then we were moved on to another area, which was then when to then do ground holding in that part of Babaji. So that would have took us back end of July, early August maybe. No, it must have been before that, because Lombo was killed early August. Must have been some time in July. Anyway, we got moved on to there. We were there for a few weeks. Then we got tasked with the op that then killed Lombo. And then he was the next one who died. And then we had another, but not in our troop, but another guy from our regiment. He was killed in back end of August, early September, in another part of the area. Again, an IED strike.
So a lot of them, weren't there, by the sound of it?
That was pretty. By that point, that was just how it went. Unfortunately,
that must have been a big thing, sort of, for you lot, like playing on your minds, I guess, when you were there, because it sounds like that was that the biggest risk to you out there, was the IEDs?
Well, yeah, I mean that's how they'd learned to have the best effect. They'd found out on previous tours, if you go and have a scrap with us, it doesn't go very well.
We're not going to win,
particularly when we've got armoured vehicles and fast air and helicopters and artillery and all that. It doesn't end well for them. But if they plant something in the floor for us to either stand on, drive over, whatever, you're going to inflict casualties. You're going to literally hold them static where they are, because you're not just going to run off and leave them. And then you can put multiple things in the floor, or you can then follow up with mortars and small arms and stuff and hit them while they're trying to extract casualties and things.
I guess would they literally set traps and kind of lie in wait for you then?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much how it went. Sometimes they'd come at you. One of the things that they did quite a bit of, particularly when we're in the holding phase, would be you'd be in your compound, and they'd just fire something at you in the middle of the night. Because it never landed anywhere near you. You just hear, and you're like, "Fuck's that?" And you get stood. You get stood to. But you're not getting a lot of sleep anyway, so now you're getting less sleep, and then you've got to go out and do a clearance patrol after, and they're obviously, I'm assuming, just watching you. But it's just you're getting more and more sleep deprived, so the chance of more mistakes happening, it just goes up.
I guess the more you're exposed to, the more vulnerable you were becoming, really, weren't you? So how did the rest of that go then, as you kind of you moved on to the next phase? So
it just sort of felt like it never ended, really. we were moved into into the holding phase. We went into cleared the compound where Lombo was killed. They were establishing little patrol bases and things all around the area the entire time we were there. We got moved from one place to another. Again, doing sort of ground holding. By the point that Lombo was killed, it had sort of been a bit of a decision, right? Look, like, because our vehicles are effectively made of aluminium. They were designed, I want to say in the 60s or something. They're called, the were called CVR2, which stands for Combat Vehicle Reconnaissance or something or other. Anyway, they were designed for fighting in the jungle back in Malaya or whatever. That's when they were being designed anyway. They were then rolled out, I want to say the 70s or the 80s. So by the time we were using them in Afghanistan in the 2000s, they were a bit long in the tooth bar then. And they were designed for to be fast and maneuverable and not really for what the role we were doing. They're not really designed to give you great protection. They had some additional armor put on them, but obviously it wasn't enough. People would have lived. But yeah, the vehicles they weren't fit for the environment that we were in. They were good in a scrap. They were really good if we were getting shot at and we needed to shoot back. They were very good at that.
Yeah.
But if you got hit by anything above a 7.62 round, it would probably go through. We had another bod from our unit. He got their vehicle got hit by a rocket propelled grenade, and the commander ended up losing his leg below the knee because it went straight through.
Right.
So the sort of thing at the army as such. That's the kit that they had. That's the kit that we had. Our regiment was mounted on those vehicles. That's what we had to use. And because of the way Afghanistan is, they couldn't get the main battle tanks out there just because they're too heavy to fly. You can get one in a transporter plane, but obviously you'd need a shitload of them. You then need all the parts, all the gubbins that you need to support that sort of battle group. Whereas you could put a few of our vehicles in a transporter and get them out, and obviously subsequently then when you're trying to send out gearboxes and engine blocks again, it's all easier to do when the vehicles are smaller.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I wanted to ask you about, I mean, we kind of definitely discussed it.
Yeah.
It was kind of around memorable standout moments. I mean, it sounds like the whole thing was kind of pretty memorable and stand out, and you've definitely highlighted what I would imagine was a lot of standout moments.
Yeah.
And I know from what you've said, it sounds like your regiment played quite a big role in that operation. Just wondering really how it's kind of shaped, how it kind of affected you, and how it's kind of shaped you in your life from that moment, really, and kind of how it shaped who you are, really. Because I imagine, experiencing something like that at such a young age would have quite a profound effect on you, really.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did have an effect. I mean, I will say, obviously, I've told my story of how Panchaypalang went for my unit. We weren't the only ones there. There was loads of other units there who were in just as much not nice stuff as we were. There was, and we were, and even Babaji wasn't the only area where it was bad. There was the rifles, they were getting smashed up in Sangin. There was bods getting really badly hit up in places like Kajaki and things like that. So it was happening all over the place. It wasn't just us in the area where we were. Lots of people were in a not nice way. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we were the only ones doing anything. Everyone else was having a party. Because that certainly wasn't the case.
Oh no, yeah, no. It just I can just tell that it sounds. I mean, it sounds like quite a bloody tour, really, and you took a lot of casualties, and I know there will have been a lot of different aspects of the military encountering similar situations. But yeah, I can't imagine anyone would go through that without it having an effect.
Yeah,
on them,
yeah. I mean,
really.
it did have an effect. I mean, I didn't realise how much of an effect it had for quite a while. By the time we got back, it would have been November 2009.
Yeah.
Then sort of you then have your bits of leave and all that sort of stuff, and then we came back after post-tour leave and Christmas leave and all that sort of thing. Being November 2009, we had quite a long period of leave, and by the time I came back after leaving, things like that, I was like, I'm done with this. So I started going through the process of putting my notice in, which obviously when you're in a normal job, dead easy. You type something and go, oh, I hereby give my notice, blah blah blah. Right, see you later. You're gone in a fortnight. In the army, you've got to give 12 months notice. And before you can...
Wow, I didn't know it was that much,
Yeah.
12 months.
I mean, that's what it... But obviously, this is what it was back in 2010.
Yeah.
You know, it could be different now, so I'm not... Don't want to... in case you get people typing and going, oh no, it's only this much now. What's he talking about? He's chatting shit, whatever. But no, back in 2010, it was a 12-month sign-off period.
Yeah.
But before you could sign off, you needed to complete like certain interviews, so you couldn't just go click a button and say I'm gone. It was like you had to see your sergeant major, your immediate line, your immediate line manager, so like your troop leader or platoon commander, depending on what unit you're in. But yeah, you'd have to complete all these interviews. Well, that took back in months, you know, just to get to the point where I can go, right, click the button like on the computer and say, right, I hereby give my notice. So that would have took till about July or something to actually get the process done. And then I was out by July 2011. Right. And then I was pretty much straight into working, doing, you know, and stuff. Right. So it wasn't.
So you've done about 10 years by this point, haven't you? Sort of 9, 10 years, something like that.
Just shy of 9, I think, because it would have been. I joined September 2002, got out July 2011. So, like the September of 2011 would have been 9, but yeah, nearly 9.
So from the age of 16, then up to your mid-20s, and then basically you're out into, I guess, what you could call normal.
Yeah, I would call it the real world.
Life out into the civilian world. So what was that? What was that transition like then?
So because I decided I didn't want to do it, because I decided I didn't want to do being in the military anymore, like finding a job, adjusting to how normal jobs are, that was all quite easy. It was my brain that wasn't playing ball. Unfortunately, I was struggling quite badly with my mental health, and I was in denial about it, really. There was a lot of like, well, I came back with all my bits intact. Like, I've got a job. I'm still with my missus. I'm not homeless. I'm not living under a bridge in a box with a dog and a cardboard sign. I'm all right. You know, you just need to sort of pull yourself together, which obviously didn't help at all, because it doesn't. But I ended up trying to cope with it, not healthy ways. So I was bulimic for a bit. Like struggled with it. I did that for good few years, which wasn't healthy. And if anyone who's watching this is in that world, is doing that, reach out, get help, because it doesn't fix anything, and it's not good for you. But yeah, so I was doing that. I sorted myself out with that one. I didn't go officially for help with that, but basically our last quarters making myself sick, and was like, what the fuck are you doing? You're going to die.
Yeah.
It sort of gave us a bit of a kick up the backside, and was like, right, okay, I can't go doing that no more. But then I would just bottle stuff up. And I probably wasn't that pleasant to be around at times. And then it all came to a head a couple of years ago, and she was basically, look, you need to sort this out or you can fuck off, like, because we were married. We had my daughter at the time as well. Since we've had a little boy, since that's all been done. But yeah, at the time we had my missus and a kid. So it's like, it's not just you need to think about this is affecting our family dynamics. So ended up in therapy from June, July time, 2023 till sometime last year when I've had my last session. And that's been the big one. That's been
pretty recently then.
Yeah. I mean, I should have done it years ago. I was in denial about it, and I was like, oh no, I'm all right. But yeah, you just bottle stuff up, or like, and it'd be like, oh, well, I should say something, or somebody would say something, and they'd just, it could be anything, it could be dead trivial, but my brain would say, oh, they're having a go at you. And they weren't, but like, when something's in your head, and I'd be like, what are you doing? And I'd sort of react to something that wasn't there. And obviously, that, like, I don't know, let's say they've asked us, hypothetically, do I want a sandwich? What do you mean, do I want a sandwich? What are you having a go at us for? And they're like, I just asked if you want a sandwich, dickhead. Well, obviously, there's only so much that you can take before, understandably, they're going to get sick of it. So yeah. Anyway, I ended up getting therapy. I should have done it way sooner.
It sometimes takes someone though, doesn't it? It takes someone else to see it. To see it, it's a different someone else looking at you from a different point of view.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise that it took someone else to point it out to you, really, because you do see it differently yourself, don't you?
No, definitely. Like I said, I mean, I was. My biggest thing was because I came back with all my bits intact, because I didn't catch a lead wasp, or I didn't get hit by anything. I'm like, well, I'm all right. Like, if anyone needs help, it's the boys who got out, or the girls who got out, or the families of people who didn't come home and things like that. You know what I mean? Like that was the big one. That was like the big problem for me, because I wasn't physically injured. I wasn't thinking, well, maybe my brain's not maybe mentally I've been affected.
Yeah, I think that's it's quite poignant, really, because I think a lot of people kind of dismiss the mental health
Mm.
implications of doing things, and obviously it's probably only the people, like you say, your wife noticed it. I imagine no one else had a clue, did they? And probably thought you were fine, or
Yeah, I mean,
maybe most people didn't notice
yeah,
it.
I mean, like obviously my missus noticed it. I know after I got help, like I obviously told a few friends and stuff, and some of them were like, "Mate, I'm so glad you have." Like, because like I'm like they knew I was struggling, they knew that I was going through stuff. Like, I'm so glad you've actually done something because like they said they were getting worried about us. So, I mean, I never had any intentions of anything, of unaliving myself or anything like that. Um, like especially since my daughter came along, I was like, well, no, like I don't want her to not have a dad. And now obviously my son's here, so I would never do anything like that. But obviously, you, they didn't know that I would have no intention of that. But it's like it's nice that they were worried about us because it means that they care. But obviously, it wasn't nice that I
Of
wasn't
course,
reaching out and wasn't getting myself sorted quicker.
but
Yeah,
you have done now, which is that's the main thing. Is yeah, you maybe there was a period of time where you didn't, but you have
yeah,
done. So, mate, fair play to you, and hats off to you for taking that step, because it's quite a big deal accepting that you need a bit of help,
yeah.
and I think that's probably one of the hardest steps. So when what actually happened then? Did you sort of think, right, I need to go and speak to my doctor? Did you receive a diagnosis of anything?
Yeah.
And
So
what was the treatment like
yeah. So what
the
I did
therapy like that
was
you got?
I did a self referral to so like I basically just googled mental health in my area, or mental health services in my area. It came up with Sunderland Talking Therapies, which is like run by the NHS in our area. Um, I did an online referral with them. I got a phone call, answered a few questions, and initially I was sent to like a group therapy. And I was sort of grateful that I was getting something, so I was going to that. But then after a couple of sessions, that was like, I don't know if this is like I need help, but I don't know if this is the help I need, sort of thing. So like because it was more about like sort of mental well being, and if you're having a down day, and that, and it's like I don't know if this is quite me. So I spoke to the people who were there, sort of pulled them
Yeah,
aside after a session, and like, oh right, yeah, you need trauma therapy. So
yeah,
I then got referred to a trauma therapist. It was absolutely fantastic, 100%. She changed my life. Like if like I owe that lady a lot. Because she definitely saved my marriage, probably saved my life. Um, or at the very least saved me life as I know it. Anyway, not that I was ever gonna, but
yeah,
like
yeah,
anyway. And she basically said, look, you've got PTSD. She's like she's like, look, you wouldn't be having trauma therapy with a trauma therapist if you didn't have PTSD. So yeah, that was it. So I was doing they call it CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy. That was what I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
I did that for however long it took, months until I
Right.
finished it last year.
Wow. Fair play. That's amazing, mate. That's amazing that it was able to, that you feel like that about it as
Mm.
well, and that you feel, that it had that much of an impact on you. Yeah, that's great. I guess, you definitely, you suffered enough, basically, didn't you? I mean, so you left in 2011,
Yes.
you said, and so it's affected you for the next decade,
Yeah.
basically, and then, yeah. Wow. Yeah, well, mate, hats off to you for, for accepting that you needed to
Mm.
do that, because I think a lot of people would just, even even if they were made aware of it,
Mm.
I think a lot of people would have trouble taking that step. Um, so yeah,
I mean, I was
respect
given
for
like
you.
a fairly significant nudge. Like say, like my missus have basically said, look, like if you want to have what you've got, like your wife and your daughter, if you want to have a family, you need to get this sorted because we're not putting up with it anymore. So, like I say, it wasn't pleasant, and it wasn't wasn't the what I'd like to have happened, but it was what needed to happen. Like I said, I don't really do regrets, but the only regret I do have is that I wish I'd done it off my own back. I wish I'd sorted it out a lot sooner. But like I say, you only know what you know when you know it. So yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, yeah. So off the back of your experiences and how it's affected you, is there anyone else that you would like to mention that you feel you would like to talk about, really?
So the people I want to talk about are the people who we lost. So first up being Nigel Moffat. He was from Northern Ireland. He was 28 or 29 when he was killed. He was an absolute beast on PT, an absolute physical specimen, but actually quite a shy, quiet guy. He was a lovely fella. Next up, you've got David Dennis. We called him Duke. He was from Wales. He had been in a ceremonial unit and he was attached to our regiment for our tour of Iraq. He then our company enjoyed what we did, and he transferred over. Again, like a lovely fella. The biggest calves I've ever seen. The worst dress sense. The man, he was the spitting double of Freddie Mercury with his moustache. He wore some horrendous outfits, some awful shirts, but a lovely guy. And he was only in his late 20s when he was killed. Then next up, we had Chris Whiteside, Norm. He was from Blackpool. He was only young, only in his early 20s. He had originally joined when he was a teenager, I think, but he'd been medically discharged. I think he'd damaged his leg or something. He then rejoined back up. And then it came to us. He was a fencer, as in the sword fighting swashbuckling sport. He was really good at that. Again, a quiet, reserved guy, but again, a lovely kid. So he was a massive loss. Next up, there was Lenny, Chris Lawrence. He was from Birkenhead. He had a wife, he had a child as well. He had a young daughter, so that was awful. But again, he was lovely kid. Another shit dancer, like. You could not bend water the shape that man could move on a dance floor. But he just a lovely fella, and I miss him terribly. Next up, you had Lombo, Anthony Lombardi. He was from Scunthorpe. Again, he had a little boy. We'd gone on the same R&R. We'd had it must have been Father's Day while we were off. Because when we were at the airport getting ready to fly back out, he had these bloody Cookie Monster slippers that his boy had given for Father's Day, and he couldn't wait to show us them, and he was over the moon. He was a mint footballer, obviously a very loving father. But I've actually since met his kid, and he's the double of him. It was frightening how much he looks like his dad. Wow. And then next up there was Richie. I didn't know Richie as well, Richie Brandon. I want to say he was from the Midlands. I think Kidderminster, but that might not be correct. I didn't know him that well because he was a mechanic and he'd only just been attached to us. But again, like every time I've met him, it seemed sound. Again, another nice guy. Yeah, it's just I appreciate him like sort of rattling through people that you don't personally know. But it's just when people hear like troops killed in Afghanistan, they just see a number, like, and understandably so because I don't know them, but they were living, breathing people with lives and families and relatives and loved ones, and it's like it's not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's they were human beings, and like you know, obviously with what's going on around the world. Obviously, the army hasn't been deployed for a long time, and there's people sort of itching for it, going, "Oh, let us go scrap." You see, obviously on social media, and it's like the reality of what it is when it goes wrong is your mate ends up going through Wootton Bassett in a box with a flag on it, and I've seen what it leaves behind. And it's not. I'm not saying that we shouldn't deploy troops to Ukraine because I'm not in a position where I can make that call or have an influence on it, or even be educated enough to give the correct opinion on it. But like, we need to accept that this is what comes with it, and it's not nice.
Yeah, I completely hear you. There's a lot of people online. There's a lot of posturing, isn't there?
Agreed.
And I think from a lot of people that haven't got the experiences. So I think you're, you say that you might not be, qualified to speculate, but I think you definitely got enough experience to offer an opinion. And yeah, you said about, I personally don't know them. It's nice to see the stuff that you share online every year because I've seen some of the pictures of the lads, and that does make you think.
Yeah,
it is a reminder. So yeah, I totally appreciate what you're saying there. And thanks for sharing all that.
No worries.
I think it'll be quite pertinent for a lot of people to listen to it, and it might bring home the realities of it for a lot of people that haven't really thought about it that much. Yeah, so we've talked about your mental health and the emotional impact that's had on you, and kind of where it brought you to. What kind of place are you in now? Then it seems like you're in a much better place now, and I know that you're working you've been a PT for quite a number of years now, haven't you? So what are you kind of getting up to at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, aside from my mental health, which obviously was in the toilet and now it's great, everything else in my life went dead smooth. Like the transition from the military to Civvy Street was quite easy in bar the obvious. So like, I wanted to be a personal trainer before I left, and yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I got a job doing that quite easily. I've obviously bounced around a few roles as you do, because the first job you get when you get out isn't going to be the one that you're going to do for the rest of your life. You go, oh, well, this is all right, but I'd like something a bit closer to home, or I'd like something with a bit more money, or whatever. Anyway, bounced around a couple of years, basically getting progressively better and better jobs. I then got employed by the gym at a university. So it's like full-time contract, overtime, holiday pay, pension, all that sort of thing. I've been there since 2014. It's wild. I've been at the university gym longer than I was ever in the military. But yeah, and then I became a supervisor there. So yeah, like that's what I'm doing work-wise. Obviously, we welcomed our little boy into the world last October. So now I'm being a dad to two kids rather than just the one. Completed the game. Got one of each flavour, so I don't need to do any more of that. But yeah, just raising kids and being dad, and obviously doing the fitness stuff.
Yeah, awesome. So I wanted to ask as well, what advice have you got for others that I guess either A, might be considering a career in the armed forces, or B, those who are looking to transition from the armed forces back into civilian life?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll cover like people who are thinking about joining first. Obviously I appreciate I've shared some very negative things, and that doesn't mean I think the army is a negative organisation. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't recommend it. All I would say is like if it's something that you think you'd like to do, because I know it's not a mistake I made, but something that I did was I was in a way blinded by, oh, tanks look cool, tanks at alley, like that you get to like blow stuff up, and while yeah, that's great and it's exciting, it's not it's not a transferable skill. Like you could, I mean, obviously since I've been in, there's been Call of Duty and bloody Warzone and all them sorts of games, and it's like people are like, oh yeah, I want to be a sniper, I want to be this or that and the other, and it's like, yeah, cool, you can go and do that. But like at some point, you're not going to be in the army anymore, and you could have been the world's best sniper doing whatever. But if you go to try and get a job as an accountant, your sniping ability is not going to count for anything. So I would say definitely like consider what you want to do, or what you might potentially want to do after, or like what you can get out of it that's going to help you when you leave. Like, it doesn't mean everyone who joins should go to a technical trade. But just accept that if you want to join and you want to be on a tank, or you want to be in something where it's going to potentially put you in direct contact with the enemy, it's not going to be as transferable as somebody who joins up and becomes a bricklayer or a plumber. So that's something I would recommend people look at, especially when you're going through the joining process, because a lot of it is focused on this blows up, boom, there's a machine gun, here's a rifle, there's a tank, there's an attack helicopter, and all that stuff does look cool. Like your inner 7-year-old will never not be impressed by it, but it's not the only thing that the army is, and it's something that I think more people who are joining should look at. Just because like you join up and everybody, or like you go to depot and loads of lads either want to go in the parachute regiment, and it's like, oh, they want to go to some commando unit, or it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a few years at Reg, and I'm gonna go for selection and go on the SAS, and you're like, all right, cool. I mean, and then obviously 99.9% of them don't obviously go on to join SF, because that isn't how it goes. But yeah, just I would say look at everything that's out there. Before you sort of sign off on becoming an infantier or becoming a tank crewman or whatever, just because there is a wide breadth of things. In terms of advice for people who are leaving, I would definitely say make sure you're doing it for the right reason. Because you always hear horror stories of lads who get out maybe for a partner, or girls, obviously, because anyone can join. But if you're leaving for a partner, although the military can have a negative effect on relationships, sort of being away and things, leaving the military isn't guaranteed to fix a relationship if the problem's already there, because you go from effectively being long distance to being together all the time, which sounds great, but then, I mean, me and Owl last found it. You go from, like, you maybe see each other on a weekend or on leave or whatever, and that's all fantastic because you've had time to miss each other. When you're living in the same house, and you don't get a great deal of separation from each other, you then start winding each other up. So I would imagine if you potentially like left thinking, oh well, the relationship's not great, I'm going to leave for them, like you'd then maybe have a bit of resentment to them when your relationship wasn't then all sunshine and rainbows. So definitely make sure that you're leaving for yourself. That would be the big one. Next thing I would recommend people do, if you've got a chip on your shoulder about civilians, drop it, because it's not that people in the civilian world are against the armed forces or anti-armed forces for the most part. Most people are just that busy living their own lives. It's like, not that they don't care in a bad way, but they're too busy doing what they're doing. Like, you can get out and be like, oh, well, I was doing this and they were doing that, da, da, da. And like, if you have a chip on your shoulder about what they were doing because they weren't in the army, well, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's only going to hold you back. But yeah, like, so if you've got a chip, leave it at the door, and then maybe like learn. Like, there's a proportion of lads who are just and girls who I'd call them financial fuckwits. Like, there's sort of this. There's this sort of there was anyway, way back when. It was almost seen as a rite of passage that you get paid on a Friday and you get skint by Monday. And yeah, you've had millionaires weekend and you've had a banging time. But like, if you do that when you get out, no one's going to be impressed. Like that you're living on noodles and shit. So learn to manage your money, because unfortunately there was a culture back when I was in of lads just being really financially irresponsible. And it's like, because the army does provide a bit of a security blanket, like if you do get in a load of debt, the army will effectively pay your debt for you, if it gets bad enough, and then claim it back from you, obviously. But they're not going to let you starve. But yeah, if you're then still trying to do that once that security blanket's been taken away, it's not going to end well. And maybe like, when you're trying to decide what you want to do, speak to people who are doing it, because unfortunately, like, again, there's a thing, and you see it when you go to reunions and stuff. There'll always be someone who's got out and under this Jack and Ori tells a story like, oh yeah, I'm making some absurd amount of money doing very little. Like, they'll pretend they're making an absurd amount of money doing a job that, I don't know, they might be like a forklift driver or something. But oh yeah, I'm making 70 grand a year and I work 2 days a week. And it's like, no, there's people who get out the army and drive a forklift truck and make lots of money, and there are people who get out the army and only work 2 days a week, but they're very rarely the same guy. You know what I mean? It's like, so get an actual lay of the land of how things are, and then you can make a better informed decision about what you want to do. Yeah, like that would be the big ones. Like, don't be an idiot. Like, stop being an idiot with your money if that's what you are doing. Speak to people who are doing a job, like who are doing jobs, so you know so you've got a better idea of what the civilian world's like. Write a CV. It's not hard. And then maybe like go onto like job sites and stuff and actually look at what jobs are paying. Because again, there's a lot of misconceptions. Because when you're in the military, you're in a bubble, and you sort of think, oh well, everyone in the civilian world's making like peanuts, or they hear a story from someone who's got out and who's told them that some bullshit tale about making 70, 80 grand a year working 2 days a week, and they go, oh well, why can't I do what he's doing? It's like, well, have a look and see what's actually out there, and then you can make a better informed decision. At least you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, mate, great advice. Really good. Yeah, I like the bit about trying to get a trade as well, setting yourself up for later in life. I think that's a big mistake people make is they don't think far enough ahead.
Yeah.
And you say about a little bubble. Fire service is quite similar, really. I know there's a lot of firefighters that have got trades outside of the fire service, but there's also quite a lot that joined quite young and it's all they've ever done. If they leave, they don't really know what to do next. So I think it's really important that people do set themselves up for later life.
100%.
Yeah, mate, great advice. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask you as well. Someone's been diagnosed with PTSD, and you've gone through those initial stages, and you've realised the impact it's having on you, and you've gone through the treatment. What advice would you give to people that on how to, what signs should people look for if people are sort of struggling with their mental health and they're realising that it's affecting them or it's affecting their relationships? Do you think there's anything that people can look for, or things that people need to be aware of that would help them realise that they might need to seek help for something that they've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult one, or I found it difficult in the sense of like, all the signs are there, but it's like you can't see the wood for the trees. It's like, you're feeling sad. You might feel sad a lot. You might be having loads of arguments, like with your loved ones and things like that. You might be feeling like everyone's against you. And the truth of the matter is, you're the problem. You're the consistent factor. It's everything's got a problem with you, and you can't see that you're the one who's maybe not right. So yeah, it's kind of. I appreciate it's not really the best answer, but it's like if someone that you trust who's close to you says, look, like, you're not right, you need to listen to them. You need to like at least take it on board a bit. That's something I should have done, and that's definitely, like I said, the thing I regret. Like if you're finding that you're having a lot of problems, be open to the possibility that maybe you're the one who's got the problem, rather than thinking that everyone else is at fault but you.
I think that's a great answer, mate. And yeah, it's very easy to, if you haven't got anything major going on, it's very easy to be defensive and point the finger at other people. So I imagine if you are struggling with significant mental health issues, it makes it even more difficult, and it probably clouds your vision even more.
Mm.
So I think that's a great answer, mate, and hopefully a lot of people, if they're listening, may take notice of that. If they
Yeah.
it might be something that they need to hear.
I mean, I don't think the army has
mate.
the sort of carte blanche on trauma. I mean, I would imagine like you go away and you could potentially go and do horrible things, but generally when you're home, it's not like that. Like whereas like you said, like guys in the fire service, paramedics, police, all that sort of thing, like you never call the police because you're having a good time, do you? So like if you're the one who's getting called out, and the things like the people in the emergency services must see, especially, it might not be people getting blown up, people getting shot all the time, but if you've seen enough of it, enough car accidents and bits and pieces, you're like, they're going to be just as susceptible to trauma and all that sort of thing, possibly even more so, because like, if you have to see something every time you're on shift and you work a full 20 odd year career, I mean, even at the height of the rotation cycle with Afghanistan, at worst, you were doing year on, year off. I mean, you're not putting in that same body of accumulation, if that makes sense. Like, fair enough, the individual stuff you might see might be worse, but you're not seeing it all the time, every day for years on end, and which I'd imagine there are people in the emergency services who do.
Yeah, it does definitely accumulate over time, doesn't it? Where definitely something for people to be aware of, I think, and look for a way to release that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask as well, what's next for you, really? You still playing in bands?
Yeah, still do a bit of that. Obviously, I've got the 2 kids now, so it's not quite as big of a part of my life as it used to be, understandably so. But yeah, still playing a couple of bands, like I said, more for a hobby than out else. Gets us out of the house and whatnot. Still enjoy me fitness stuff. I'm doing the peer-to-peer run up here in a couple of weeks, and then our gym's hosting a fitness event in June, so I'll be taking part in that. So yeah, just that's sort of me thing, as well as obviously being a dad and being a husband and doing family bits.
Awesome, mate. Great. I wanted to ask before we part ways as well, have you got any books, any movies, any documentaries, or any podcasts that you would like to recommend to people?
I would like to recommend this podcast because I'm on it. Yes. Right, and then so if people are into, like, want to sort of hear like military humour, there's a really good podcast called The Bottom Third. That's absolutely fantastic. There's lads on that they just rip the piss out of each other all the time, and it's like, it's how soldiers speak to each other, which it's really funny. Obviously, if you're not from that world, maybe it might seem a bit like harsh, oh my God, they're being really mean. But if you've been in it, it's all in good fun, and they all love each other, and it's all great. But yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, I might give it a listen. I like that sort of thing.
But yeah, and then film wise, for people who maybe, because obviously I appreciate Afghanistan was a long time ago now, for people who maybe grew up at a time after, like after it happened, there's a really good film called Kajaki. It's a British film, and that really captures the atmospherics of what it was like. Obviously, there's inaccuracies with kit and bits and pieces that people can get dead wanky over and go, oh, well, actually, that they shouldn't be carrying that and da. But like, in terms of what it's like when the shit hits the fan, that captures it so much better than other films I've seen. Like, one, because it doesn't have a flipping soundtrack over it. You know what I mean? You're not hearing bloody Danger Zone playing while people are in a scrap and that.
Yeah, it's gritty, isn't it? Yeah, I've seen it. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
good show. Was there any any kind of like positive moments over there, or what? In fact, what did you have much interaction with the natives
the
over
locals?
There? Did you have much interaction with the locals?
I think in Iraq quite a bit. We used to see that you'd engage with the public quite a lot. The locals, to be fair, where we were for the most part quite friendly. There's a funny incident. So on my tour of Iraq, we were stood in this marketplace, and because where we were, it was because it was quite quiet, we call it soft posture. So you don't have your helmet on, you have like a floppy hat on. Anyway, we're sort of doing our thing, sort of in this market. Anyway, this group of fellas comes up to our troop sergeant, and he's like, "Oh, let's start pointing at us." Anyway, he calls us over, and like troops like, "Oh, Sax, take your hat off." So they took my hat off. Anyway, apparently these people thought I was a girl and they wanted to buy me. It was only when I took my hat off. They're saying, I had like short hair, and like, "Oh, right, okay." So
so is that because because you're the little guy?
Because I was little, and apparently I had quite a nice ass. That was so like
brilliant.
So they could have made a few quid if they'd done that, but no. So it was quite funny. And then on my second tour of Afghan, we was quite like this. I found it funny. It might sound a bit dark to other people. Anyway, we're in this compound. Like these compounds are not like free of life. There was wild birds and shit living in there. Anyway, the people who had it had chickens, and so we'd pushed with the people had left. Anyway, we're all sort of like sat around. Had this little orchard thing in it, and there's a little stream running through the middle. And we used, because it was fucking boiling, every time you come back in from a patrol or an up or a stag or whatever, we'd all sort of jump in the stream and basically get a rinse. Anyway, we're all sort of like sat by this little stream thing, getting a wash and sort of enjoying the shade underneath the trees. Anyway, like we get like the compound gets contacted, we all run to go to go stand to and whatever. Our troop leader, he's about to run through this doorway, a flipping chicken flutters up in his face. He's like, like obviously this chicken's like trying to attack him or whatever, or he's like trying to flutter out of his way, and he shits himself. And honestly, it was the funniest thing. It was hilarious. But we're like, obviously, we've still got like go stand to, but they're all like running past, going, "Ah!" It's hilarious.
He didn't shoot it.
No, thankfully not. No, the chicken lived. The chicken did live.
Good. That's a relief. I thought you were going to say he'd shot it and then you barbecued it and.
No, thankfully not. No, we weren't that savage.
Yeah, good stuff. Awesome, mate. Well, it's been really nice catching up with you.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thank you very much for having me on.
I really enjoyed it. No, mate, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
You'll have to give us a shout if you're ever back in Hull. Not that I'm there very often, but I go back now and again. Yeah. But yeah, mate, I will let you get on with your day. No. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course, mate.
Thank you for taking the time, and thanks for sharing your experiences and stuff.
Yeah, of course, mate. Thanks very much.
Really appreciate it, pal.
Yeah, no worries.
You take care, mate, and I'm sure we'll have a natter online and have a whinge about stuff.
Yeah, no bother, mate.
As we do. And yeah.
Catch you in a bit.
All right, thanks, mate.
What you doing?
Speak to you soon, pal. See you later, mate. Bye-bye.